Hello from the UN Global Compact. This is Thorin Schriber, Participant Engagement Manager here in New York at UN headquarters. Thank you for joining, those of you who already have, our webinar for Western Europe. We're going to wait one more minute for others to join. The participant list is growing quickly. We have over 600 registered for the webinar today. So we're very excited to kick off in just about 1 minute. And thank you again for joining. Okay, good day again, everyone. Thank you for joining the UN Global Compact's webinar for Western Europe. Today, we are going to outline the current benefits and value of being a member of the UN Global Compact. We will be joined by my colleague Antonio Hautlin, Executive Director of the Global Compact Network of Switzerland and Liechtenstein, as well as one of our most engaged companies in that network, Barry Magarinos-Wishat, Chief Sustainability Officer of Firmenich. During the course of the webinar, you will be able to ask questions in this Q&A button at the bottom. You see the red arrow pointing to it. At the end of the webinar, we'll have a Q&A where we answer a few of those questions. So please feel free to type your questions during the course of the webinar as we go through it today. So jumping right in, as we all know, business has evolved. The way we all do business has fundamentally changed. It's not an option anymore. It's competitive advantage and competitive necessity, and the driver of the operational efficiency and innovation that we all seek, especially the companies on the call today. We've seen in the last years that companies that embed sustainability into their operations and strategies have improved financial performance, 90% lower cost of capital, 88% better operational performance, better stock price performance, and higher return on equity. But we also know that the sustainability landscape is hard to navigate. It can be confusing, as you see in the maze of various initiatives and opportunities and engagement on the board. So the Global Compact is here to help navigate that maze and the challenges you might face, like resource constraints, the need for guidance and tools and training. We are a guide to sustainability in the lens of the UN system, because we know that businesses are engaged in the global goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, and have been since they launched, an integral partner in those goals. But 92% of them, when they launched in 2015, companies said that they were aware of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, yet only 13% identified the tools they needed to really drive them internally in their operations and strategies. So we're cutting through that complexity. We're helping connect companies with the actions on the SDGs, the platforms and the partnerships that will help drive them so that we can all achieve the SDGs by their due date in 2030. And of course, this is the 20th year of the UN Global Compact. In June, we'll be celebrating our 20th anniversary. But we look back to our founding in 2000, after a call from then Secretary General Kofi Annan to have a full partnership between the UN and the private sector, because he knew that would be the only way to achieve the sustainability goals that were just then becoming urgent and clearly necessary. He was the first Secretary General with an MBA, so he understood the power, the influence, the reach, and the necessity of business being part of this movement. So from that call in 2000, 40 companies joined the Global Compact. Today we number over 10,000 businesses like yourselves committed to the Global Compact's principles on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. And we have 3,000 non-businesses in over 160 countries and 60 local network teams, like our team in Switzerland, who you'll hear from shortly. I want to pause to thank all of you who are already part of the Compact in the Western and Northern European region. You number over half of our 10,000 companies. We have more than 5,000 companies in Western Europe. So you really have been leading the charge since our inception and continue to do so today. I'm manager for Europe, but also in working on North America. We want to cross-pollinate many of the successes we've seen in the European region across the Atlantic to North America to get more companies here to join, and indeed China, but that's another manager's purview. Our local networks help us engage you on the ground through awareness raising, exercises, capacity building, leadership recognition, policy dialogues with local, municipal, and national governments, as well as the multi-stakeholder partnerships that are necessary to facilitate that collaboration and drive the shared value that we all seek. So again, our core principles on human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption, and the SDGs are all based in UN declarations and conventions. And that's important because that lends legitimacy to them. It is the only way to engage on these goals with the UN through the Global Compact. They were agreed to in 2015 by every member state. 193 countries agreed to these 17 goals, what I think of as our KPIs for the next 10 years. And now we're entering the decade of delivery of these goals because we must achieve them by 2030 or the world is in dire straits. The Global Compact itself does three key things for companies with whom we work. First and foremost, we build trust and transparency to publicly communicate the commitment of your company and the progress you're making on our principles and the SDGs, all anchored within the UN system. And that commitment is, of course, at the CEO level to our Secretary General, to the highest level of your company or organization. We help you achieve your sustainability objectives through access to our guidance, trainings, tools, support, and resources, both here in New York at UN headquarters, but also locally with your country level networks. And finally, we bring you to the table. We need business to have a seat at the table to help us shape the corporate sustainability agenda. The SDGs were shaped in partnership with the private sector and of course are being driven in full partnership with you. So we provide that access to companies in the global conversation. Going to go through a few of the benefits and the value of being part of the Compact. First, communicating your commitment and the annual report on your progress. As many of you know, each year, companies in the Compact submit a communication on progress, stating how they have advanced the 10 principles and the global goals. We help with tools and self-assessments to advance your work, to identify areas where you can improve, or areas where you're leading and others can learn from you. And we disseminate those best practices across our global network. We do that in a number of ways through the online participant profiles, our media toolkit to align with the UN's communications around sustainability and the global goals. We have recognition of individuals, the pioneers, SDG pioneers in companies each year. We recognize 10. And we have our flagship events and speaking opportunities, both globally in New York and locally in your networks. Our participant profile looks something like this. This is an example from Colgate-Palmolive. You can have a video if you're at the full participant level, and we'll go into those levels later and what it means to be at the full participant level. You can have your COPs highlighted with the SDGs you see in the middle that are covered and focused on most, and social and digital media on the right, a way for you and also all of your employees to engage with the work and to show their pride in the company's involvement in this global movement of sustainability. Our communications and media team and marketing team share our media toolkit, including press releases, social media guides, ways to enhance your participant profile, ways to show your commitment to the global compacts into the world at large. And we identify 10 SDG pioneers each year. This is our 5th year, so we'll be identifying our 5th class of SDG pioneers who are really driving the global goals within their companies, because we like to shine the spotlight on good action from individuals as well. Our flagship events and speaking opportunities happen throughout the year. In the local networks, they are key making global goals local business, and those happen in a series of local networks around the globe. Our 20th anniversary, I'd like to highlight, is this June in New York. It's the Leaders Summit of the Global Compact, and that will be the 15th and 16th of June, both in the UN headquarters and in the large Javits Center. We expect over 1,500 sustainability leaders like yourself to join us in New York to be part of that in-person summit. And then, of course, UN General Assembly Week in September. September 21st will be our private sector forum, where we invite CEOs to be at the table with heads of state, with UN chiefs, with foundation and NGO leaders, all those involved in our shared value partnerships, to be part of the same sustainability conversation. And then on the 23rd, the Wednesday of that week, we will have the SDG Business Forum that is larger and includes a wide discussion of our action platforms and our work around all of the principles and the SDGs. And finally, later in the year, the key UN Forum on Business and Human Rights in Geneva, in Switzerland itself. So we have some new guidance, training, tools, resources to help our participating companies really drive sustainability. Our library has grown over the last 20 years to include many useful resources like Water Stewardship Toolbox, Ambition Loop on climate action, how to embed the SDGs into your strategies. Those are all available to all participating companies. But more proactively, we have recently launched a Global Compact Academy, which is an online learning tool with virtual sessions and e-learning courses, series from the world's leading influencers on areas like climate, like gender equality, like the importance of a principle-based approach to business. So you and all of your employees at the full participant tier can access this academy and learn throughout the year and be part of that online community. These are some of the academy sessions which are available. Some are on-demand sessions, which you can go and watch at any time. You can also join real-time in person, but they range from science-based targets and how best to align those with Paris compatibility, with how to address the gender pay gap in your company, or to take action on the SDGs that might be most relevant to you and your business and your industry more specifically. Some of the specific tools that we've launched include a gender gap analysis tool, a tool for companies to see how they match up against the world at large, a benchmarking to see where they're doing well on gender equality and where they might be able to do better based on what other companies have done across the world. And of course, science-based targets for climate action. We have also recently, in January of this year, launched our new global impact initiatives to drive key tipping points. These are key areas that the UN and the Global Compact have identified need to be driven. On gender equality, we know that we have dropped from last year, the World Bank said it was 202 years away from gender pay parity. That's actually dropped to 257 years. So we know we need action on gender equality. Climate action, we all know, is dire. Companies ask, and we ask them to fill the gap where we're missing action from governments and other actors that may not be able to help us get to our goals by 2030. We are engaging young professionals through our Young SDG Innovator Program. And finally, mainstreaming and driving SDG ambition across companies, both within the compacts, but also companies that we would like to join to help us get to 2030 and embed the SDGs holistically across their strategies, operations, and stakeholder engagement. The objectives of these global impact initiatives is to generate behavior change across over 1,000 companies at the country level. So this is being driven from UN headquarters, but in the regional context across the world. Finally, to wrap up, our main goal is to integrate the 10 principles and the global goals across your strategies, operations, and stakeholder engagement so that you can drive purpose, better governance, corporate strategy on sustainability. You can drive business, unit business strategies, quality management and people management in your operations, and better annual reporting, communications, and sales and marketing around what you and your company are doing to drive sustainability and help us reach 2030, as we have all planned to do. Finally, to help identify the key areas for companies that would like to benchmark, we've launched a new SDG Action Manager. It starts with the 10 principles to see where you are on human rights, labor, anti-corruption, and environment, and gives prescriptive advice for your specific industry on what areas might be highest risk for you and what policies, practices you can put in place that would help advance sustainability and mitigate those key risks. It helps you set goals and track your improvement towards those goals and collaborate across your company to make SDGs a priority through your operations and strategies. We give support along the way. We are, as our head of legal used to say, a guide dog, not a watchdog. We want to be here to guide you through the complex UN system. We have direct access to Global Compact Help Desk here in New York. We have dedicated participant engagement managers, that's me and my colleague Sarah, who's at the table here in New York, but also our local network teams. Antonio in Switzerland and his team are there to speak with and answer questions from companies more locally. So do feel free always to reach out to us either in New York or Switzerland, depending on where you think your question could best be answered. And finally, to help shape the corporate sustainability agenda, we have 7 action platforms, which you see on the right of your screen here. These are groups of companies, working groups, really leading the charge on these areas. And this year, we're focusing on everything from good reporting and sustainable finance to decent work and the issues of supply chain management and understanding where your products are being supplied from, and that there's no forced labor or child labor, for instance, in those supply chains. We have health and climate, a combined action platform now. On the environmental side, we also have an oceans platform launched a couple of years ago with the government of Norway, Prime Minister Solberg, and our office launched that together. We have a water on land, water security through stewardship, and finally, a foundational peace, justice, and strong institutions platform to ensure that our society remains one that is healthy for people, planet, and for prosperity. These conversations happen, again, both globally and our flagship events, which I outlined, but also locally in over 175 policy dialogues, including thousands of companies speaking with governments and other actors and stakeholders in the shared value space to drive these. So Antonio is going to speak with us a bit about how that plays out in the context of Switzerland and Liechtenstein. So I'll pass it to Antonio, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Thorin. Hello, everybody. Greetings from Geneva. What you have heard now is the more global activities, and we as local networks are trying to implement them here locally on a country or regional level. So I'm speaking as one example of our over 70 local networks. If you want to know more what happens in your local network, just go to our UN Global Compact website. You see a picture here and check what is happening in your local network there. You will have all the addresses, contacts, etc. That's the first thing. Next slide, please. Can I scroll down? Yeah, that's it. So that's what you will see when you log in. At the moment, we are 166 participants. We are growing quite fast. When I started, we were some 14, 15 member companies here in Switzerland. So we are on track. And the basic idea is to bring together as many companies as possible, to learn from each other, to create a movement of companies who are really engaged into the 10 principles, into the Agenda 2030, and want to contribute to a better working of our global and local economy to improve the world, the life of all inhabitants of this planet. So that's the main idea behind, and what does that mean now in a very concrete sense? Next slide, please. Yeah, sorry, the structure I forgot. In Switzerland, we are a business association. We have a board, which is controlled by the General Assembly, and the General Assembly is composed of all members. So if you register as a UN Global Compact member, if you're accepted, you automatically become member of the local network where your headquarters is based. And if you're a transnational, you have also the option to become, as a local company, as a subsidiary member. And then in Switzerland, we have a special situation. We have a memorandum of understanding with our administration, so our federal government, where we do different activities together to engage in multi-stakeholder dialogues, in dilemma dialogues and other activities to bring forward the agenda of UN Global Compact and the UN on the one side, and connect it to the national action plans on business and human rights, green economy, and corporate responsibility. Next slide, please. So what is the main roles? You have already seen it a bit, but the main thing is really bringing together the committed companies who want to engage. And then the second one is the activities you have seen before presented by Thorin are on a global level. We take all these informations, all these tools and instruments, and invite our local companies to engage. Not only the big transnationals, our main objective is really to touch now the middle-sized and even smaller companies, because they make the big difference. They produce more than 70% of the GNP in Switzerland and globally. And then we try to facilitate the access to the different tools, resources, knowledge, etc. Because there is a lot of things are going on the level of the UN Global Compact. And sometimes, especially for the smaller companies, it's confusing where they should start. So we want to operate as a gateway for permanent improvement of corporate responsibility practices and bring together the different actors from government, business, civil society, and academia. That's why we collaborate where it's possible with our local NGOs in dialogues, in events, in trainings. We work strongly together with PRIME, Principles for Responsible Management Education, here and the different business schools and universities to advance our agendas and give access to the companies also of this knowledge. Yes, and last but not least, oftentimes there are questions and difficulties, and we try to help companies if they have concrete questions on how to upload the COP or other smaller things. Next slide, please. Just some examples now what that means in concrete. The main focus we have are the sharing and learnings. We have to operate in 4 languages in Switzerland. Since we are very small, we try to adapt depending on the needs of our members and the participants. One focus is anti-corruption and SDG 16. There we are quite strongly involved, and now we will also promote and help to introduce ISO 37001, which is especially for small companies. Then you see different other ones. I will not mention all and everything. An important part is these events where we work on the Swiss national action plans together with the federal departments to make them known and to connect them to our agenda, the 10 principles, and the sustainable development goals. One other example, which is a specificity here in Switzerland, is the dilemma dialogue. We had some serious issues with larger companies. The one we are working on now is the Syria case of LafargeHolcim. They had a big scandal some 4 years ago, and they're really now on track and changing their practices. And we are in permanent dialogue with them since the case happened. And now we had our first closed door dialogue for our members only, where LafargeHolcim was explaining what happened and the measures they were taking. And it shows how a big company can handle such a difficult situation. And we will go on with these kind of dialogues. That's one of the projects we will push forward, also in other cases which may appear. And at the end, we will also involve NGOs and government departments, and maybe we will even make out of it a business case, a case for business schools to show how a company can handle such sensitive issues. Then we have a number of trainings. We organize introductions into RBC CSR, United Nations Global Compact. We do that 3 times a year in the 2 areas of Switzerland in the 3 languages. We do COP trainings, starting with a webinar and then having a workshop where the companies exchange on best practices. And now we are now launching the Swiss Triple Impact Project. In fact, we do that with B-Lab Switzerland, and it's about the SDG manager and then accompanying companies and attract new companies to this tool. And through this tool, we want to change the attitude and especially touch the smaller companies, that they start to realize where all the opportunities lie with the Sustainable Development Goals. Here we are in strong cooperation with academia and also with the Swiss government officials. Then we are participating in different other activities, CAS, these are postgraduate formations in the different regions. And we have a cooperation with the University of Chur, where we now launch a CAS in sustainable tourism, where we try to get in touch with the tourist sector in Switzerland. These are some examples. The most important part is the coaching part. In fact, we have a lot of interactions. That's why I'm in Geneva today and tomorrow and yesterday. We try to work with companies and support them in their progress, either individually or in smaller groups, in workshops. For that, we also organize working groups. We have one on supply chain management, and now we are trying to put up a group on anti-corruption, because this is a sensitive issue which concerns especially the large companies, but more and more SMEs are also touched and involved in these questions, since many of the Swiss SMEs are transnationally active and not only locally. Yes, and then we have 2 European working groups, the one on climate change and the other one on human rights due diligence. They are led by the German network. That's another opportunity. We try to collaborate as much as we can with our other local networks here in the area. Italy, France, Germany, Britain, Austria, and Spain. So also to create value added, especially for the companies who are working in different countries. Maybe with the time we'll do also more transnational with China and others. We have a strong connection to the Russian and the Ukrainian network too. Then last but not least, we are still too small. So we must make marketing and PR, public relations. So we have put up a Tour de Suisse on responsible business conduct, CSR and the SDGs. We will continue. It's now the 3rd year we are doing that. These are events where we have workshops before or afterwards, and then a public event with companies telling the stories, and invite smaller and larger companies to become member of the UN Global Compact. Then we have on a regular annual basis our Global Compact Dialogue, normally connected to the General Assembly. This year it will be the 18th of March, together with Paul Polman. We'll have a larger workshop with him. I'm really looking forward to that for the 20th anniversary of the UN Global Compact. And then connections to different other actors, Swiss Federal Administration, which is another network, the cantons, universities, business schools, etc. And last but not least, key accounting and getting new members. We have to grow to have more impact and to be able to do more. So on a regular basis, we try to contact companies, invite them, follow up, and invite them to become a member. Next slide, and then I will finish. Yeah, this is an example with some images from the supply chain working group, which is going on. Next slide, please. The SDG Action Manager, that's a very important tool for us. We will strongly promote here. Next, please. And yeah, we have, in cooperation with different consultancy companies and partners, they're also partner in our network, we have a sustainability help desk where companies or individuals can ask questions, and then they will get within a couple of days an answer to that in 4 languages. So yes, next one. Next slide, please. That's it. So that was my contribution from the Swiss network. We are very engaged and we're really convinced that we can make a difference. And I started 5 years ago, and I see the dynamics which are changing, and also the reality of sustainability becomes more and more important. So we are really happy to be able to do that and to be in connection with all the networks over the globe and with New York. And we'll continue and invite everybody to join us. That's it.
Thank you very much, Antonio. It's always a pleasure to speak with you and our colleagues in Switzerland. We now are very pleased to have on the line Dr. Barry Magarinos-Ruchat, the Chief Sustainability Officer of Firmenich. We ask companies to join these webinars to discuss how they are living their sustainability journey and working with the UN Global Compact to drive the SDGs in their operations and business strategies. So Barry, I will pass the call to you to describe how you do that at Firmenich.
Certainly. Thank you so much for the opportunity, Thorin, and thank you also, Antonio. Can you move to the next slide, please? I just wanted to introduce myself to you a little bit more in detail to give context to this presentation. I could say I'm a Global Compact baby. I started to work on the UN Global Compact in 1998, 1999. At the time, I was a PhD student in the US, and I was lucky enough to have my internship at the UN System Staff College in Turin, Italy. And over the course of the summer in 1999, we had hosted a few workshops where we had business people and UN people coming together. And that was basically the creation of the UN Global Compact. So I was there, the intern, making photocopies, being the sponge, learning and discovering. I didn't know that then public-private partnerships, engagement between the UN and business would become my career, but also that for the past 20 years, the Global Compact has been kind of a red line in everything I've done. And actually, we just heard Antonio. I used to be the chair of the board of the Swiss network for 5 years, and Antonio has done a remarkable job making the UN Global Compact principles, very visible in Switzerland. But what is most important is creating a safe space for companies and businesses in Switzerland to discuss their sustainability journey. So I'm very happy to discuss the journey with you today online and hopefully inspire you and make you feel comfortable about the way to go. This is not rocket science. Very often sustainability is the revolution of common sense. And so I say, it's good management practice. So let's look at that together. Next slide, please. Thank you. So at Firmenich, we are a Swiss company. You may never have heard about us because we are the Intel of smell and taste, meaning we produce fragrances and flavors for food and beverage companies and for luxury companies and for home care and body care brands. And we are a science-based company, but the uniqueness of Firmenich is that we are still, after 125 years, fully owned by the Firmenich family. And that has made our sustainability journey very unique. Next slide, please. And you will see how we have taken this journey. In fact, we met the Global Compact as a company in 2008. I joined the company in 2010. By the way, I've been there running sustainability for 10 years now already. But I came in a company that was already embarked in the sustainability journey. As you can imagine, I spent 7 years of my life with the UN, then with the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, a large program that was funded by the Gates Foundation. So I was coming from the development sector. I was not going to just move in a company that was not sharing my values. And as you can see, they joined the Global Compact before I joined. And they did that because it was felt by the Firmenich family, by the shareholders, but also by the management of the company, that the 10 principles were not only fully aligned with our corporate values, but more importantly, were helping us to find a common language with our ecosystem, meaning with our clients, with our suppliers. It was giving us a roadmap on how to really integrate responsible business throughout the Firmenich group, meaning from sourcing all the way to our HR and safety practices and our environmental practices. So you see here that actually our story with the Global Compact continued all the way to last year, where we decided to become a lead company. So we spent, as I mentioned, a lot of time with the Swiss network, and we still do. And then we also engage at the global level. Why we became lead? Well, because our CEO is extremely engaged globally on sustainability, but also because, you know, we felt the pressure. We felt the pressure of the climate change crisis, the biodiversity crisis, the need to create new food systems. And we felt, well, you know, we cannot just do it on our own. We had a lot of partnership along the way, as you can see, working with many other platforms. But we felt that becoming a lead company was the next step. And I think Thorin explained very nicely what are the benefits of joining the Global Compact. For instance, for us as a lead company as well, having better access when you come to New York for the Climate Week, having you know, the latest information, having the latest requirements, understanding how to do your reporting, and so on and so forth. So as you can see, we have been in this game for a long time and very much benefiting from it and enjoying it. And it's been a pride also for 7,000 colleagues around the world, because they're impressed by the UN logo. You know, it's not just the logo, it's the spirit, it's the culture, it's wow, we work with the UN. And that is also a very important attraction for our teams at home in the 63 countries where we operate. Next slide. So, you know, as you can see, for us, sustainability is about partnership. We realized very quickly at Firmenich, you know, that you cannot do it alone. We know what we don't know, you need to partner, and the Global Compact is one of these critical partners for us. Critical because of its holistic approach. We are working on different platforms. We're working on the reporting platforms. We're working on the decent work platform. And we are embarking, as we speak, in the SDG manager assessment. There's a lot of ways to partner around the Global Compact, be at the national level or at the global level. Next slide, please. Then for us, what historically we found always very interesting was the Global Compact partnership with academics. And that's something that we have done ourselves around sustainability and with Antonio as well in Switzerland. Why we do that? Well, we do that to keep learning for sure, but also because the Global Compact and the academic partners we have at home or at the Compact level is a way to make sure we are nurturing future leaders who understand responsible business. I think we all have in this journey to make sure that we bring on board young people in our teams, for instance, coming from these universities. To give you an example, very often companies, and I'm sure Antonio will say, yes, that's happening a lot, are saying, I don't have enough resources to work on this, so I don't have the right team. Well, bring students on board to help you. And that's a lot of what we have done. To tell you the truth, right now in my sustainability team at Firmenich, I have 3 students working with us in the course of a few months. They have a specific project, they learn, we learn, and it's a win-win for everybody. Next slide, please. So what also this whole journey helped us going through is to create a sustainability culture. We felt that there is no way you can engage into the 10 principles and having only your head of sustainability or you know, maybe your head of public relations running your Global Compact work. It has to be a full company approach, and to do that you need to create a sustainability culture. So we've done it at Firmenich in a ton of different ways. First of all, by expressing very clearly our purpose. You see here, for good naturally is, and create of positive emotions is our purpose. But we also want to make sure that we create the space where people collaborate with a spirit that is aligned with the 10 principles. And that's about, you know, the type of workplace we're offering. It's about how we engage at the compliance level, for instance, launching our human rights policy, our responsible sourcing policy. So you have, you know, the whole environment, but also the compliance part, and then making sure colleagues learn to collaborate, making sure that we trust each other. And we think this is the spirit of the Global Compact. It's all about partnerships, it's all about collaboration, but it doesn't always come naturally. So we had to help create this culture and give opportunities to our colleagues to learn and discover how to work differently. Next slide, please. So that's it. Sustainability is everybody's business. And, you know, at Firmenich, people working on sustainability, I would say it's everybody. I'm certainly, as the Chief Sustainability Officer, I'm the engine. I'm the person who's challenging everybody to do more and better, to report on performance, to take new challenges, but it's absolutely impossible to do all of this alone. So for me, it's making sure that if you are the person that will be in charge of bringing your company into the 10 principles, you don't do it alone. Work with others, work with HR, work with finance, work with purchasing, even, you know, science, innovation. All these people have something to benefit working around the 10 principles. Next slide, please. So as soon as you do that, you transform yourself and probably your small team, because everybody usually has a small team working on these issues. You transform as a global network. You end up realizing, and you know, when I say global, it's not geographic. It can be for a small company operating at the regional level. The network is about the fact that it has to be holistic in terms of the responsibilities, the accountabilities, making sure that the Global Compact engagement is not just coming from the top and have a great CEO saying, I'm signing, I'm going for it. And I think it's been always very important to have the CEO on board, but you need the network behind him to support his efforts, to prepare briefs, to engage with a lot of different other companies, and to participate in your regional network. Next, please. Then, you know, I think what the Global Compact is offering us today is also making sure that we are all aligning on a common language that would help us collect the right data. What I'm saying here is, for instance, if you look at the 1.5 campaign, the science-based targets, I think the fact that we are all defining performance to fight climate change in the same way with the same KPIs and collecting the same data will help us all have much more impact and fast track everything we are doing. So this data-driven sustainability time that we are experiencing right now is also something that the Global Compact can help you think about, conceptualize, because again, this is something very difficult to do alone. Next one. The critical role of reporting, as you know, it is critical when you become, you join the Global Compact to do your progress report, to deliver your sustainability report, whatever you want to call it. But you have this time of the year where you take stock, where you bring everything you've done during the year into, you know, a few pages or a lot of pages, depending on your company style. But really understanding that, in fact, reporting is not a constraint. Reporting should be a time where, you know, you create excitement around the topic, because a lot of colleagues will have to share data with you. They will have to write pieces of the report. And then it should be a moment of pride when the report is launched and shared, and really to celebrate as a company all the achievements you may have done over the year. So really, I think the 10 principles and obviously the SDGs as well are now, through a GRI approach, helping us to structure our reports in a very professional way, and in a way that you can use them during the course of the year to present your business, to convince others to work with you. And more, for those of you who have public investors, to engage with your investors and to report on your non-financial performance. Next slide, please. So basically, in this journey, and what the Compact does for you and did for Firmenich was to move, for instance, around social issues. We moved from looking at social from a philanthropic point of view to social impact. And that's, of course, also what the SDG manager and the work with B Corp will do. It's really helping us think differently. I don't want to just help people. I want to think about what's going to be the impact against the SDGs. So again, we all have an ability to speak the same language and to move in the same direction. Another example, next slide. It really helped us to have, you know, we used to have a very compliance-driven, risk management-driven sustainability work, and really trying to start shifting into opportunities. What kind of business models do we have that have a better impact on society? And for us, here I can give the different examples on product innovation that helped us move from risk management to opportunities, but the message is really, your work around the Global Compact might help you challenge your business model or identify new business opportunities as well. It's not just about a constraint, a reporting mechanism, or, you know, a framework, but it's really also helping us to think out of the box. Next slide. So I want to close and leave a little bit of time for Q&A. As I mentioned, we are a family-owned company. And very recently at the shareholder meeting, our CEO said, there is no long-term shareholder value creation without values. And I think the 10 principles are giving us, you know, this very strong compass of values that have been around for 20 years, that are universally recognized, and very inspiring for many companies. And they have been inspiring for 20 years. And they will continue to be inspiring because, you know, the UN principles behind them have been around for even longer. So I really encourage you all to, you know, reflect on this, and think about in your industry, in your region, how can you best embed the principles and make sure that, in fact, they don't become a sustainability program, but they become business as usual. Thank you, Thorin. I'm John, and I will be happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Barry, and indeed all of the Feminist team for embedding the values and principles of the UN Global Compact into everything that you do and helping drive the SDGs to 2030. We will have questions at the very end. I'm going to wrap up with a brief discussion of what we see as the competitive advantage of being part of the Global Compact. Like Feminist, many of our companies say that engaging with the Global Compact has really helped them advance their sustainability, and their own company has guided their reporting, has driven implementation of sustainability policies, and shaped their company vision. We see Global Compact companies outperforming their peers, 31% higher on corporate government, 29% higher on emissions management, and 22% higher on human rights and labor rights. We see higher margins, market valuation and creditworthiness. Higher ESG scores, environment, social, and governance scores lead to higher margin premiums, higher valuation premiums, better positive impact towards creditworthiness. EcoVadis last year in Paris announced in an analysis of 30,000 companies that those in the Global Compact have significantly higher CSR management system scores, and they outperform their supply chain sustainability. Investors are also listening. In fact, about a year ago, BlackRock, the largest investor in the world, started using the 10 principles, which we've been discussing, of the Global Compact. They use those principles to vet their exchange-traded funds. Many other financial institutions have also taken stands to say that sustainability is not just philanthropy, it is a competitive advantage. It is a necessity to remain relevant and profitable and survive in today's world. Businesses are taking action. They're upholding the 10 principles at a high rate. They are aligning strategies, but we are working more with companies to align strategies across their business operations and to align those specifically to societal and environmental needs. This happens highly at the CEO level. This is Global Compact, a CEO-led initiative first and foremost, but we really are pushing engagement of senior management and middle management. You see the numbers there dropping down a bit. We need all employees and indeed all people, even outside of Global Compact companies, to engage in this global movement if we're going to reach the SDGs in the next 10 years. And it is all about leadership. We have leaders like Paul Pullman, former CEO of Unilever, who is vice chair of our board. The Secretary General, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, is the chair of our board, and Bola Adesola, vice chairman of Standard Chartered Bank Nigeria, is the other vice chairman. So we have a strong board, strong voice of the private sector, along with the UN to drive this leadership. I'll quickly give an overview of what it means to participate. The participant tier I was mentioning is the key tier that we ask big companies to join. That is the tier that gives you access to all of our tools and resources, including the Academy. The signatory tier is available at half the annual fee, which I'll give you an overview in a moment. That's for companies engaging more locally, more with just their local networks, but not as much on a global scale, and smaller companies. LEAD is a designation that, of course, Feminist has. Those are companies engaging in 2 or more of our action platforms and then have undergone an integrity screening to say they really are leading companies in the sustainability space. We will share all of these slides with everyone who has registered. I'm not going to go into the granular details here, but as you see, there are different benefits at the participant and somewhat fewer at the signatory, but we are an inclusive organization. We give tools and resources like our library to signatories. Those, like the Academy, are reserved for our full participant level companies. To join the Global Compact, as I know some of our attendees today are companies who are considering joining but haven't done so yet, it's a fairly simple process. We ask you to go online. There is a how to join. We will be following up with this information as well. It lays out the steps. The first is really to look at the application, prepare the letter of commitment from the CEO and have that signed by your CEO or equivalent, and then complete the application online. After that, it takes just a couple of weeks to go through our due diligence process. And in most cases, we are then delighted to welcome you into this global movement to drive sustainability with the Global Compact. There are annual contributions. As I mentioned, participant, you see here in the middle, and on the left, signatory is half the rate. In companies with less than 50 million annual revenue, the global participation fee is waived. We like to include everyone, so cost should not be an exclusionary factor. From there, the sliding scale goes up at either signatory or participant, depending on your annual gross sales revenue. And then to engage in our deep action platforms, the working groups, there is an additional fee. We can send further information, or you can reach out to me or my team, or indeed Antonio or local network teams in the country where you are headquartered. So that wraps up our overview of the current benefits and value of engaging in the Global Compact. I'm going to pass to a few of the questions which you have submitted during the course of this webinar. The first question is the SDG Action Manager available to all companies or only a participant tier? The answer is yes, it is free and available to all companies. You can use it to assess where you would like to focus your action with the Global Compact, and then work with us to guide you in that direction. The second question is, can a company that is a member of the UN Global Compact access the Academy irrespective of tier? The answer to that is no. That is only at the full participant tier. It is a benefit we offer to you, and every employee of your company can access it, but you need to be at the full participant tier rather than the lower signatory tier. And finally, is coaching and training available in all local networks? And the answer is definitely yes, it is. All of our local networks, like Switzerland and Liechtenstein, like Antonio and his team, offer guidance and training sessions, both in person, or you can call them, or us in New York, but locally, they tailor the specific sessions and guidance to the priorities and needs of the participating companies in their country. As you can imagine, those vary across our 60 plus local networks. So you can look up your local network to see whom to contact if you don't know already on our website, www.unglobalcompact.org. And there is a tab on the homepage that says Engage Locally. And that Engage Locally tab will show you all the networks and the overview and contact points for that network. You can contact your network directly in country, or indeed you can contact me, the manager for participant engagement in Western Europe. My contacts are on the screen now, and they will also, we will be sending a follow-up email to all of the registrants for this webinar after we finish. So we are just at the hour mark. I want to thank everyone for joining, and we look forward to being in touch soon.